Over 200 years ago, 3 boys started digging in a spot. What they uncovered has never been explained. Since then, grown men, millionaires, and even the President of the United States of America have chased what's buried beneath this spot. Some spent everything, some died trying, and even till now, no one has ever reached the bottom. This is the story and the mystery of Oak Island. It was the summer of 1795. A teenager named Daniel McGinnis was exploring the dense woods of Nova Scotia's Oak Island. Tucked off the coast of Canada, this small island didn't look like much, just trees and rocky shorelines. But as Daniel pushed deeper into the forest, something caught his eye. There, in a clearing, was a strange depression in the ground. A perfect circle, maybe 13 feet wide, and beside it was an old, rotten block and tackle hanging from the branch of a tree, almost like someone had built a pulley system right there, right above this exact spot. Daniel stood there for a moment, staring. Something was off. The land looked worked, like someone had been digging, like something was buried. He ran back to get his 2 friends, John Smith and Anthony Vaughn, and the 3 boys started to dig. The deeper they went, the stranger things got. They found flagstones covering the surface, like someone had tried to conceal the spot. Then, every 10 feet or so, they hit wooden platforms, perfectly placed logs, one layer after another, like a ladder into the earth. It was a pattern. Someone had built this. Someone had gone to a serious effort to hide whatever was below. They dug as far as they could with their basic tools, 30 feet down, but the hole kept going. They knew they couldn't do it alone, but they were convinced there was something down there, something worth burying so deep it took actual engineering to hide. That single discovery kicked off one of the longest, most dangerous, and most expensive treasure hunts in human history. Hundreds of expeditions, dozens of deaths, millions of dollars poured into the dirt, all for one thing: money. By 1804, word had spread. A group called the Unsolved Company came in to investigate further, armed with money, labor, and tools. They picked up where the boys left off. At 30 feet, they found more wood. At 40, clay mixed with charcoal. At 50, more logs. It went on like this, precision layers spaced every 10 feet, almost like a trap, built deliberately. Then they found something stranger. At 90 feet, the diggers hit a large, flat stone. Carved into it were strange symbols that were unreadable at the time to anyone. As a result of this, the digging hit a snag, and everyone left. It sat silently underground for years, but decades later, someone came out, cheering, claiming to have cracked the code to continue where previous excavations stopped. Not only that, but this person also said, 40 feet below, 2 million pounds lie buried. Just like that, the chase was back on, like it never left. But just as they prepared to go deeper to get this money, something happened. The pit became filled with water. A flood occurred. But here is where it got weird. It wasn't rainwater that caused the flood. It was a powerful surge that filled the shaft as if the ocean itself had punched through the earth. The pumps failed, the water wouldn't stop, and within minutes, the water covered it all. It didn't make sense, because this wasn't a natural flood. It was a system, a booby trap. Whoever built this pit, if it even was a pit, designed it to fight back. Later discoveries showed it had finger-like tunnels stretching out toward the coast, pulling seawater into the shaft through layers of sand and coconut fiber. Yes, coconut fiber. You see, in Nova Scotia, coconut fiber doesn't grow anywhere on it. It would have had to be imported from thousands of miles away, and in the late 1700s, it would have had to be on purpose. Which begs to question, why? Remember the coconuts, because we will come back to it later in the video to show how weird all this is. Now, despite the setbacks and deadly booby traps, treasure hunters kept coming. Over the next 150 years, a parade of companies, adventurers, and dreamers arrived at Oak Island, determined to solve the riddle. They dug new shafts, built tunnels to bypass the flood system. They used explosives, steam-powered pumps. Some tried to freeze the water. But again, and weirdly enough, like the island on the series Lost, the Oak Island always fought back, and always won. Nothing they tried or did ever worked. In 1861, one group triggered a collapse that destroyed the original shaft. A man died. Others followed. By the 20th century, 6 men had lost their lives to Oak Island. Still, no one stopped. Why would they? Little fragments kept hope alive. When they would want to quit, that's when a major discovery would take place, and it would reignite everyone's obsession to keep digging. In 1897, a drill hit what seemed to be a small metal object, possibly a gold chain. Another sample brought up a piece of parchment with the letters VI on it. Just 2 letters, but to those who'd spent years chasing the legend, that was enough. It became an obsession. Some said pirates built the pit, maybe Captain Kidd. Others thought it was the French army, hiding treasure during the war. Then whispers started about the Knights Templar, the Freemasons, even the lost works of Shakespeare. Everyone had a theory, and everyone wanted to be the one to prove it. Even Franklin D. Roosevelt was intrigued. In his younger days, he'd considered investing in the dig. Though he never set foot on the island again, he followed the story for the rest of his life. And I understand, because the thing about this story is that when you try to give up, someone discovers something that reignites the obsession to keep looking. Plus, if you are right, the discovery would make anyone a millionaire. So, the legend continued, all the way to the 20th century. In the early 2000s, 2 brothers from Michigan, Rick and Marty Legina, bought a controlling interest in Oak Island. They'd read about the legend as kids in a Reader's Digest article and never forgot it. Now, as adults, they had the resources to investigate it themselves. They brought in tech, ground-penetrating radar, sonar, heavy drilling rigs. Their journey was documented in The Curse of Oak Island, a History Channel series that pulled millions of viewers into the mystery. Thanks to the Legina brothers and The Curse of Oak Island TV series, this centuries-old mystery now beams into millions of living rooms every week. But behind the cameras, the digging continues. The technology is smarter, the machines are stronger, but the island? It's still silent. Over the past decade, Rick and Marty have brought in ground-penetrating radar, sonar imaging, and high-powered drills. They've found underground chambers, strange tunnels, massive stone pathways buried deep under the swamp, artifacts that shouldn't be there, even more clues that make the whole thing feel just out of reach. They're closer than ever, or so it seems. But for every new discovery, a new dead end shows up. Tunnels collapse, water floods in, the ground gives way. It's as if the island itself is playing defense, like it's protecting whatever secret it holds. Week after week, the Leginas and their team uncovered pieces of the puzzle. Scraps of metal, centuries-old nails, fragments of bone from distant parts of the world. They even found more coconut fiber buried deep in the ground. Always just enough to say, something happened here. In 2016, a drilling operation struck something unexpected. Human bones deep underground, right in the money pit area. Then, DNA tests revealed something strange. One bone came from someone of European descent. The other, Middle Eastern. Two people, two different continents, yet both were buried in the same trap-filled pit, and not by accident. Either way, this wasn't just a random burial site. People died building or protecting whatever is down there, and someone made sure their remains stayed hidden. The real allure of Oak Island isn't just the idea of treasure. It's the clues, the eerie symbols, the ancient objects, the random items that don't belong where they're found. It's as if the island is speaking in code, whispering secrets through every artifact left behind, like this 90-foot stone. Found in the original money pit at 90 feet down, this flat stone had symbols carved into it that supposedly translated to 40 feet below, 2 million pounds lie buried. That one sentence sparked 2 centuries of obsession. But there's one huge problem. No one knows where the stone is now. It disappeared in the early 1900s. Some say it was used as a fireplace slab. Others claim it was stolen. And the only record we have is a drawing someone recreated decades later from memory. Some skeptics believe it never existed in the first place, that it was invented by early searchers to attract investment or hype. After all, nothing raises money faster than the promise of treasure. And honestly, if you were losing time, money, and morale, wouldn't a mysterious clue be a great way to keep your crew believing? We only have a copy of the symbols, which, by the way, was sketched by memory decades after it was found. Which begs the question, was it real? Or was it a well-placed prop meant to keep people digging? Because here's the wild theory. The inscription may not be a clue at all, but a trap. A trigger to make people believe there's treasure just out of reach, so they keep digging deeper and deeper, right into the booby trap. Now, that's one clue, but it's not alone. In 2017, a tiny lead cross was pulled from the swamp. Covered in muck, it looked like junk until someone cleaned it up. That cross had weight, age, and a strange design, a looped top, almost like a Templar cross. Experts compared it to relics found in southern France, near Templar strongholds. Some said it matched the medieval period, others shrugged it off. But then came a theory that made everyone pause. What if this cross wasn't just a symbol, but a signature? A marker left behind to signal who had been there. Not pirates, not Spanish sailors, but Templars, religious warriors running from persecution, hiding their most sacred relics across the sea. In the 1300s, the Knights Templar were wiped out in Europe by the Catholic Church. Accused of heresy, their leaders were burned at the stake, and their vast fortune, gold, sacred relics, possibly even religious texts, vanished, just disappeared. Centuries later, old maps and documents pop up suggesting that some Templars escaped by sea. One of those maps just happens to lead across the Atlantic to Nova Scotia, right where Oak Island sits. Now, you might say it's all a big coincidence, but then you look at the layout of the island. Structures and markers on Oak Island mimic old Templar sites. It's one of the island's biggest mysteries. Literally, on one part of the island, 5 massive boulders line up in a perfect crucifix pattern. The arms are symmetrical. The alignment is too clean to be random. Fred Nolan, one of the island's early treasure hunters, believed it was intentionally placed. Each stone is huge. They don't match the natural terrain. They look like they were brought in. But by whom? And for what? Some say it's a Christian symbol, left by Templars or Freemasons. Others think it's an astronomical marker, pointing to the position of stars during a certain date. Possibly a clue to when the treasure was buried or when it should be found. Either way, this cross raises a chilling question. What kind of operation has the manpower, knowledge, and intent to arrange a monument this massive on a tiny island in Nova Scotia? And here's where it ties back in. What if the pirates weren't hiding treasure at all? What if they stumbled onto something older, something left by the Templars, and reburied it for themselves? Or maybe they were hired to protect it, becoming guardians of a vault not filled with gold, but with relics, secrets, maybe even the Holy Grail. Too wild? Not when you realize the flood tunnels themselves may have been a failsafe, a Templar-designed security system. You get too close, and the ocean comes rushing in to erase the evidence. Of course, if you bring up the Templars, the Freemasons aren't far behind. Some say the Freemasons are the spiritual successors of the Templars. Others say they're just obsessed with symbolism and rituals. Either way, the connections are hard to ignore. Freemason legends often speak of buried knowledge, hidden chambers, secret rituals guarded by coded messages, and architecture. Guess what? Oak Island has all of that. Symbols, patterns, hidden rooms. There's even a theory that the entire money pit was designed like a Masonic initiation rite, a descent into darkness, filled with trials and puzzles before enlightenment at the bottom. Several key figures involved in the early Oak Island digs were rumored to be Freemasons. Coincidence? Maybe. But do you remember the parchment fragment found underground, the one with the letters VI? Some believe it was part of a Masonic cipher known only by initiates. But it doesn't end there. Next on the list of clues is the parchment fragment. In the depths of the money pit, buried in the mud and water, a piece of parchment was recovered. Just a fragment. But it wasn't the parchment that made the news. It was what was on it that caught everyone's attention. The parchment had writing, faded ink on old, fragile paper. Here's the strange part. Parchment like this wasn't cheap, and it wasn't common outside of legal documents or high-level correspondence. Some theorists say it might have been part of a map. Others believe it could be a piece of one of Shakespeare's lost manuscripts, if you buy into the Francis Bacon theory. But wait, what does Shakespeare and Francis Bacon got to do with this? This is where the theory web gets weird. But weird is what makes Oak Island tick. Some people believe William Shakespeare didn't write the plays he's famous for, that they were written by Bacon, a philosopher and alleged Freemason, who hid messages in the texts. Bacon wanted to preserve certain forbidden knowledge, possibly connected to the Rosicrucians. So, he encoded it in plays and buried the originals in a vault that just might be under Oak Island. At first glance, this sounds ridiculous. But the parchment, the coated stone, the wooden platforms, some researchers say they match descriptions in Baconian manuscripts about concealed crypts. Still not convinced? Here's the strange part. Some of the earliest symbols found on Oak Island match ciphers used in Baconian texts. It's a stretch, sure, but with Oak Island, everything is a stretch. Until it's not. But either way, the question stays the same. What was paper doing that far underground in a sealed pit? If someone just wanted to hide loot, why include delicate documents? Again, that's not the only strange thing. Remember I mentioned coconuts earlier? Now, the reason why Nova Scotia and coconuts in a sentence is weird is because coconuts don't grow in Nova Scotia. Nowhere at all. That's like looking for a panda in Africa. But yet, at various levels of the money pit and flood tunnels, diggers have found layers of coconut fiber used as filtration material. Now, pause. Why would someone go out of their way to ship thousands of pounds of coconut fiber to a small island in the North Atlantic? The answer: water control. Coconut fiber is perfect for draining and filtering water. Some believe it was used to create an ancient water trap system, channeling seawater into the pit if someone dug too deep. And who could have done that? Pirates, maybe? Some people thought so. Captain Kidd and Blackbeard were both active in the Atlantic. Stories say Kidd buried part of his treasure before being captured. Some believe he trusted no one and built a vault that only he could find again, one filled with gold, silver, maybe the loot of a dozen ships. Recently, a team found what looked like a man-made stone road under a swamp, perfectly laid stones in a pattern, like a path leading somewhere, or from somewhere. Then, scattered around the island are triangular stones, heart-shaped rocks, and chiseled symbols. Some align with the solstices, others point to the money pit, but they all feel like part of a larger puzzle. Some believe they're navigation tools, coded in symbols only the original builders could understand. Others think they're warnings, messages meant to deter grave robbers. Every artifact found on Oak Island, no matter how small, seems to ask a bigger question. Why is it here? Who put it there? And what were they trying to say? From Templar crosses to coconut fiber, from lost parchments to stone crucifixes, these pieces tell a story, not a clear one, but a layered one. A mystery built on symbols, misdirection, and signs that always seem to point in multiple directions at once. And that's the genius of Oak Island. It doesn't just hide the truth. It scatters it like breadcrumbs across centuries, waiting for the right person to follow the trail. And it still hasn't found the right person yet. Legend has it that 7 people must perish before the treasure is found. Whether you believe in the curse or not, here's the cold truth. 6 men have died on Oak Island, and that's just the documented ones. Others have been injured, hospitalized, and traumatized, and yet the hunt continues. Because for some reason, this tiny patch of land has a gravity to it. It pulls at people, demands their attention, dares them to try again. And that's the final twist. Whether the treasure is real or just a myth, it has the same power. It consumes. So you've all heard what people have said regarding Oak Island, and to be honest, it's quite convincing. But not everyone buys into it. Critics argue the Oak Island mystery survives for one simple reason. It's addictive. They say every new discovery fuels the myth, just enough to keep the wheels turning. Like finding a bone and calling it evidence of a Templar, or spotting a cross and linking it to ancient Europe. And here's the kicker. Some of the island's most dramatic finds were later proven to be not that special. Coins that weren't that old, wood that wasn't that deep, tools from the 1800s. They were just normal. Then critics started noticing a pattern. A group of people dig, find something small, and wrap a massive story around it, and everyone goes mad again, looking for the treasure. But despite centuries and millions of dollars being poured into this island, one thing is true, and that is, no treasure has been found. Critics argue the story of Oak Island is a self-sustaining legend, that the deeper people dig, the more they need to believe something's there, just to justify the madness. They don't think the treasure is real. They think the hunt is the treasure. And they've got a point. The original story is built around the famous flood tunnels, that when diggers hit a certain depth in the money pit, water suddenly rushed in from underground, refilling no matter how fast they bailed it out. Supposedly, someone centuries ago built an elaborate trap system, beating seawater from multiple directions. But there's an answer for that, and it has nothing to do with treasure, and everything to do with salt. According to one lesser-known theory, the money pit wasn't a vault. It was a primitive salt manufacturing operation. Not the kind you'd find in a factory, but something clever, hidden, and extremely illegal. Back in the 1700s to mid-1800s, France and a few other European powers taxed salt like it was gold dust. Salt was crucial for preserving fish, especially for long voyages, and if you were a fishing vessel heading back to Europe, you had to pay up. Heavy salt taxes were just part of the brutal economic game. So instead of coughing up tons of cash or francs, some say smugglers and fishermen used Oak Island to make their own salt, under the radar. The massive pit, with its layered platforms and tunnels, were designed to channel seawater in. The coconut fiber and the stone drains? That wasn't some elaborate booby trap guarding treasure, it was a filtration system. Salt water would flood the shaft, sit, and evaporate, and over time, the sea salt would crust along the tunnel walls. Then, crews would harvest the salt directly off the surfaces. It actually explains a lot. Why the strange network of flood tunnels? Why the presence of coconut fiber, which absorbs and filters? Why was there so much effort put into bringing water in rather than keeping it out? Because that's exactly what you'd want if you were using the sea itself to manufacture salt in a way that left no fingerprints. And it would also explain why so many cultural artifacts have turned up: French, British, Spanish, and even hints of Portuguese, not because they were all hiding something together, but because they were all using the island, quietly, repeatedly, over the years, maybe even generations. It was like an open secret, a black market pit stop for salt. No treasure, no holy grail, just a quiet rebellion against the taxman. The critics argued that the so-called treasure is just a misunderstanding of what Oak Island actually was, an illegal but practical operation that left behind confusing clues. And when you compare both sides of the argument, the critics sound more reasonable. And if what the critics say is true, it kind of breaks the myth. It makes everything feel smaller, less magical. So here's what we're left with: a place wrapped in mystery, a story with symbols, tunnels, whispers of gold, and holy relics, a legacy of obsession. A legacy of obsession, of genius, of sacrifice, and a long line of people, rich and poor, young and old, who gave everything chasing an answer they never found. The critics say it's all fake. The believers say it's just hidden. But either way, Oak Island never gives up its secrets for free. It demands something back. And for 200 years, people have been paying the price. After 200 plus years, Oak Island is still whispering hints without ever shouting answers. It's tempting to call it a hoax, or say it's just dirt and disappointment. But then you see that cross pulled from the earth, or the hidden road under the swamp, or the cavern that shows up on sonar but vanishes when you try to drill it. It messes with your head, because something is there. Maybe it's gold, maybe it's ancient documents, maybe it's nothing but the world's greatest unsolved mystery. But here's what we do know: people keep coming back, not for money, not for fame, but for the need to know, because Oak Island has this grip, this ability to make you believe you're just one dig away, that the next hole, the next scan, the next clue might be the one that unlocks it all.